Hola estudiantes, ¿cómo están? I hope that you guys are doing great and that you had a good time in the spring break, that you were able to rest a little bit, to go somewhere, or to stay with your family and spend some time with them. So I'm very glad to be back, and we are starting with our lesson number 8. We have completed lesson number 6 and 7. So we're starting with a new lesson, which is number 8. We still have lesson 9 and 10 to go. So we are kind of halfway done with our semester. We're also going to talk about and discuss in more in detail our final project. So please keep an eye on your email, and also of course Blackboard, because I'm going to be giving you more information about the final project. So please be patient and be available with your group to discuss further assignments. We're going to start by looking at our screen, and you can see that we have this beautiful picture, very, very colorful, and this is from Guatemala, and this is related to the celebrations of the Holy Week, or that Easter celebration that we have, because this is very important in the Catholic culture, in the Catholic religion, right? And you guys know that in most Latin American countries, Catholicism is very, very important. So we do have different celebrations for the different days of that Semana Santa, or the Holy Week, and some of those celebrations include decorating the houses, or decorating the churches, or decorating the streets, just like you see over here, because of this celebration and this important time in the Catholic religion, right? So you can see over here sometimes these kind of rocks, I don't know how to call it, they look like rocks, but they are sometimes made with, like flower petals, or with seeds, like they dye the seeds, and then they do these with some wood powder that has been colored. So there are several techniques to do this. This seems to be like the wood, powder that has been colored, and then people work, for many, many hours trying to convert this into a beautiful rock. So you can see the example here. Like I said, this is supposed to be a street in Guatemala, but it looks just like any other street in small towns in Mexico, Belize. I'm pretty sure that many, many countries celebrate just the way that you can see on the screen, because Semana Santa, it is very, very important for the people that believe or that follow the Catholic Church. So here we have it, really pretty. And this time I chose this picture, and then we're going to, come back to the pictures that you have sent me. So thank you for that. And we will come back, and I'm going to make sure we do have time for that as well. Okay, so like I said, we are going to transition into Lección número 8. I don't know if you guys paid attention from what you see on the VHL Central, but Unidad número 8 is one of my favorites because of the vocabulary. So I'm going to share that screen right now. Just give me one small second. And we are going to go to our book. All right, so here we have our book. So we have Unidad número 8, or Lección número 8, and we are going to be talking about la comida. I know that this is very exciting because, like you're going to be able to order at a restaurant, or maybe be able to understand a little bit better all the items that you see on the menu and all of the vocab that you see over there. So if you look in our screen, we are talking about la comida, And if you pay attention to the communication goals that we have, is to learn how to order food at a restaurant, how to talk about and describe food. Give me 1 second. Let me go to the screen of our book. Okay. And then if we go to the topics that we have in this unit as well, is the preterite of stem changing verbs. So pay attention here. Do remember that we do have some stem changing verbs, and we have discussed this in previous units. We have learned the present tense, but this time particularly we are going to talk about the preterite of stem changing verbs. So keep an eye on that, because we have specific rules and structures to follow. Then we're going to talk about the double object pronouns. Okay, so we are going to pay attention here, because both of these topics, the preterite of stem changing verbs and the double object pronouns, require that you guys remember some of that information that we have discussed in previous units. Okay, so if you do not know what is a stem changing verb, please make sure that you review some of that information. Okay, and the double object pronouns, that means that we are going to use objeto directo y objeto indirecto at the same time. Okay, so please go back, if you don't remember, to objeto directo y objeto indirecto. If you need some help finding that information, do not hesitate to let me know. But we are going to talk about both of those together in a sentence. Okay, so keep an eye on objeto directo, objeto indirecto. We also have comparisons, comparaciones en español. We have superlatives as well. So probably you have heard these terms in English, but we are to give a little bit of detail, of course, in Spanish, right? So just to go and keep talking about la comida, we are going to go to the next page. Remember, this is our e-companion, and this is page 262. Your e-companion, you can find it in VHL Central, so make sure that you go there to find the vocab of the unit. Now, I always suggest you to go use the flashcards. Please do so, because they are a great resource. So every time, I do not miss the opportunity to remind you that you have that available in VHL Central. And it's a great opportunity for you to study and to quiz yourself. So I think the flashcards are great. So then again, back in page 262, from our e-companion, we are going to have on this little box, we have some vocab related to the restaurant or to, food in general. So let's look at the vocab that we have over here. We have words such as el camarero or la camarera. At this point of the semester, I'm pretty sure that you already know that using a different article and using a different ending changes the gender of the word. Okay, so we have el camarero for male, la camarera for female, right? Then we have la comida, food or a meal, la cuenta, el dueño or la dueña, los entremeses, el menú, el plato principal, la propina, la sección de no fumar, the non-smoking section, right? We always see that at the restaurant. Then we have some drinks, then we have some meals and some sides, some desserts. So please keep an eye on these vocabulary. You remember that it is your responsibility to keep, up to date with all the words that we're studying. And like I always say, you do not have to learn every single word, but you do have to be familiar with the vocabulary of the unit, of course, right? In order to be successful in this unit and in this class. As always, we do have some lexical variation and or variación léxica, and in some places words are called a different way, right? Just like in some places in North America or in the United States, the people say soda or pop, or England and England says biscuit, and the US says cookies. Just like that, we do have lexical variations in different parts of one country even, or in between different countries, right? So keep an eye on those variations. It doesn't mean that one is more correct or more right than the other one. They are both right because that's the way that people use those words in different places. Now, we do have a lot of frutas as well. We do have some fruits over here. We have la pera, la banana, las uvas. I'm 100% sure that you know a few of these already, or that you can recognize some of these, because remember, we have already discussed that some words are cognates, right? We have talked about this before, and cognates or cognados are those words that are very, very similar to a word in English, and they actually mean that same word that you relate to the word that you see in another language, right? So for example, in here, la banana. What does it sound like? What does it look like? And it does mean the exact same in English. La banana means banana, right? Muy bien. So here we have it. Pay attention to frutas and verduras over here. We have tomate, lechuga, cebolla, el champiñón, el maíz, la zanahoria. Okay? So then again, go back to this page 262 to look at some vocab about fruits and vegetables and just general information about the restaurant and meals. La siguiente página, the next page, 263, we're going to talk about las carnes, the meat, right? Most of us like, some meat at some point, some chicken, some turkey over here, el jamón, la carne de res, la chuleta, el atún, el salmón, if you like fish and seafood, la langosta, los camarones, and so on, right? So we can see over here pescados y mariscos, fish and just seafood in general, right? So mariscos is the term to talk about seafood. Bien. So in here we have some activities, and I'm going to go over these that we typically do. And in this case, we are talking about identificar. We have to identify. We know these kind of activities already. And it says, identifica la palabra que no está relacionada con cada grupo, ¿cierto? Vamos a ver, número 1. Tenemos las palabras champiñón, cebolla, propina, zanahoria, okay? So maybe you can recognize a few of those, but let's go back to over here, to this vocabulary over here, and you are going to see that one word in there means tip, okay? Over here, let's look at the word propina. Propina, it is very important that you remember that, especially if you travel. You have to know if you, based on the culture, if you have to leave a tip or not, or how much, right? So just keep an eye on that word that is propina. So if we look at all the other words that we have champiñón, cebolla, we have mushrooms, we have onion, we have tip, and then we have carrot. So the one that doesn't fit in there, the odd one out, or the one that is not related, la palabra que no está relacionada es la palabra propina. Tip doesn't have to do with, the vegetables that we see over there. Número 2, we have camarones, ajo, atún y salmón. So let's look over here. We're going to look at this section over here with pescados y mariscos. We have camarones. We have also atún, tuna, and we also have salmon, right? Now, which one is the odd one out? Ajo. Ajo means garlic. So garlic doesn't go with pescados y mariscos. Muy bien. Número 3, tenemos aceite, leche, refresco y agua mineral. So aceite means oil, leche, milk, refresco, soda, and agua mineral, we have mineral water, right? So aceite wouldn't really go there because it's not a drink. And finally, we're only going to go through 5. We have cerveza, lechuga, arvejas, y frijoles. So we know that frijoles means beans, arvejas, they are like white beans or butter beans, and lechuga is lettuce. So all of these are, you know, things that we eat, and cerveza is something that we drink. So it doesn't really go with, with the rest of the words, right? Okay, so that is just to give you an idea of how to work with the words in here, because we have to find, or at least to recognize, words that are related to drinks, to meats, to fish, and so and that kind of stuff, right? So for these, we had to identify the odd one out. Vamos con la siguiente página. El desayuno. We're talking about breakfast over here. So then again, we continue with that theme of eating, right? In this case, we have breakfast, we have la mantequilla, and you can see that in here we have some pictures. La mantequilla, el jugo de fruta, el café, el pan tostado, el azúcar, la salchicha, y el huevo. So we can see some typical breakfast in here. Of course, we most of the times have some coffee, juice, eggs and bread, toast in the morning, right? And then we have almuerzo. Now, one thing that I want to let you guys know is that sometimes if you travel abroad, you're going to see that people have different perceptions of the day, you know, perceptions of time. And one of the things that we have discussed already is those cultural features, right, in different countries. And one of those cultural features that we have recently discussed is the siesta. I don't know if you remember that video, but in that siesta, there was a guy visiting Spain, and the people in Spain explain how they take a break, you know, to take a nap throughout the day, to be more energetic whenever they come back to work. So they usually have a break to have lunch and maybe a small nap as well. But if you remember, their day looks very different. They are going to, and even the guys mentioned, we eat at, you know, later in the day, we have dinner later in the day, we work until later in the day, because they do have a break in between. So this is very important for some Latin American and Spanish cultures in general, to, you know, keep up with the times that they have their activities. I don't know if this makes any sense, but what I'm trying to say is that whenever you have breakfast or whenever you have lunch, sometimes it varies from the region, from the geography. Sometimes in some countries it is very you still have a lot of sunlight throughout the day, and maybe until 8 or 9 p.m. That's why, you know, the breakfast, lunch, and dinner look different, and they are served at different times because of this change. Okay, that was only a parenthesis because I wanted to, discuss that situation. And in here we have el almuerzo. This would be something like lunch, or yeah, something like lunch, something a little bit heavier, right? Midday or so. So what are the items that we have over here? We have el pan, we have papas or patatas fritas, so that's another lexical variation there. We have las manzanas, el té helado, y la hamburguesa. So we have some heavier meal. And finally, for dinner, we have la ensalada, el vino tinto, la sal, la pimienta, el arroz, los espárragos, el bistec, y la sopa. So this would be actually, I would say that like kind of a typical Mediterranean dinner, with some protein, with some steak, and then some soup, some wine as well, and a salad. So it looks, that we have several things to eat, and several food groups, right, in that dinner that is most of the times the most important meal of the day. Okay, so here we have la cena, and if you noticed, we have over here this word bistec. Okay, so a lot of people ask me, where is bistec coming from? It comes from beef steak, actually. So it sounds funny to you, I'm pretty sure, but it is something that has been adapted to the language, and probably at the beginning people didn't have or started using this word to refer to the steak, but it has been somehow like changed to be adapted into the Spanish vocabulary. But the word bistec actually comes from beef steak. So I think that that's pretty interesting, and you can see the influence of many languages in other languages as well, right? And talking about influence, I want to go to the reading of this unit as well. La unidad número 8. We're talking about food, we're talking about la comida, but we are going to go to this page, which is page 272 of our e-companion. And the reading is about frutas y verduras de América. We're not going to go through the whole reading, but we are going to be discussing fruits and vegetables coming from the continent of America, okay, the American continent. Now remember that the American continent includes, Canada, United States, Mexico, and all of Latin America. And we have a lot of countries, right? We have Guatemala, Belize, Peru, Argentina, even Brazil, but sometimes we don't discuss Brazil because they speak Portuguese, so it is not a Spanish-speaking country, but it is a Latin American country. We also have Bolivia, Uruguay, Paraguay, Colombia, Venezuela. So just imagine how rich this continent is, right? And it is referred as well as the New World. Because that some people came from the old world, from Europe, to the continent of America, and they discovered many things that they had not seen before, many fruits, many vegetables that they were not aware of, or they didn't know at all, right? Now, why so? Because in Europe and the American continent have different geography, that have different weather conditions. That's why in Europe and in America, we usually have different fruits, vegetables, even animals, because of those differences, right? So when they arrived in the American continent, they discovered, but obviously they existed already. So they just, they were all of these fruits and vegetables were new to the Spanish people that arrived in Latin America. And they discovered that there were other meals or other things to eat, just as the potatoes and tomatoes and chilies and pineapples and papaya and avocado and corn. All of these things weren't really harvested in Europe because of the weather conditions, right? Obviously, at this point, we are pretty globalized. We have connections with, the whole world, and we can send products, or the land has been modified to be able to grow these fruits and vegetables. But at the beginning, whenever they were just recently in contact, Europe and America, they saw that these two continents were very, very different, right? And they had different things in it. So here are some of the fruits and vegetables that come from the American continent. And just like you can see over here, tomato, even chocolate and corn and some seeds come specifically from the American continent. So chocolate was, discovered or first used by the people that in living what now is Mexico, right? Before, like hundreds and centuries ago, we didn't have the same division in these countries, right? So yeah, so here we have some of these elements like peanuts and beans and that kind of stuff that were later brought to the old world, right? They were discovered in the new world. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of this. That's why some of the words actually keep the original root, just like tomato. It comes from tomate, and this is a word that has some root in Nahuatl, which is a language that was original spoken in Mexico, and I believe that some parts of Nicaragua, Guatemala. So it has been, displaced by Spanish, but this is an original language in, most part of Mexico, scattered towns that still speak the language, which is Nahuatl, then again. And the original word is Xictomatl, and it became in Spanish jitomate or tomate. And then in English, tomato, right? And then aguacate is the word for aguacate, and in English, avocado. Chocolate, and then in Spanish, chocolate, and then in English, chocolate, right? And then chili, and then Chile in Espanol, and chili in English. So there we have it. They have some roots in, other languages because they are originary from these places, right? From these towns in these areas that now are Mexico, Nicaragua, Belize, and so on, Peru. The potato was very important for the Incas in Peru, in Uruguay, and all of those areas that are very high in the mountains. So yeah, so these, like fruits and vegetables have a lot to do with our world now because they have been sent out to the whole world, right? All right, so that was only just a little bit of information about fruits and vegetables from America, or el continente americano, or Latinoamérica. All right, so let's stop with this screen, and actually I'm going to go ahead and share. I'm going to share the actual presentation for our grammatical topic 8.1. Okay, so let's dive into our topic or our grammar topic 8.1, el pretérito de los verbos de cambios de raíz. So maybe it sounds like a lot, but you guys know that we have already discussed the stem changing verbs, right? So actually, let me show you a different picture right now. Maybe this is going to refresh your memory. We do have some stem changing verbs. The stem changing verbs are all of those verbs that have a change in the stem, right? Like just like the name says it. Now, why so? Because whenever we want to conjugate verbs, we have to keep a stem. And let me actually go even back, even far back. So just to be clear, let's take as an example the word hablar and the word estudiar and the word or the verb dormir. Okay. So over here we're going to we have two just regular verbs. We have hablar, we have estudiar, nothing changes, and then we have a stem changing verb. Okay. So over here we have hablar. So we're not going to worry about these verbs because the stem is going to stay the same. It is not a stem changing verb. Hablar, the stem is going to be like this because we know that to find the stem we have to eliminate the AR, ER, or IR ending. So we're going to do the same over here. So my stem is going to stay like this, and then the endings are the ones that change throughout the conjugation. How so? Because we have to make it match with the subject, right? So we already know that. I'm just typing it in here to make it a little bit more visual for you. So the conjugations are going to be something like yo hablo. Let me go to hablas. Okay. Hablas. Okay, we already know this. Ella habla. Nosotros hablamos. Okay, so let's leave it there. So you can see that over here we do keep that stem throughout. Hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos. We are keeping that stem, right? So that is going to happen over here as well, but that is not going to happen over here because this is a stem changing verb. Now the endings for the conjugation are going to be exactly the same that we know that we have been discussing. You know, we have three groups of verbs, the ones ending in AR, ER, and IR, and each of those groups have a different ending. So in here we are just going to keep those endings that we have already learned. Now, what is the extra step that we're going to go with a stem changing verb? It is going to be a change in the stem. So, dormir is going to go to yo duermo. Okay, you can see over here, we are not just keeping an O, but we are changing that O into UE, duermo. Now, this is just a brief recap of stem changing verbs as well. Yo duermo, tú duermes, ella duerme. Over here, nosotros dormimos, ellos o no vosotros duermen, and ellos duermen. And I'm going to fix that in a little bit. Let me just move this over here and this over here. And you are going to see that not all of them are going to be affected. Oh, actually, I have a typo there. Vosotros dormís. Okay, so here we have it. And I don't know if at this point it is coming back. But we have something like this, and sometimes, like us as instructors, use this just to help you remember that they do not have such as a pattern, but a hint for you to remember which ones are affected is to use a boot shape, and the ones inside the boot are going to be affected by that stem change, and the ones outside are not going to be affected. Okay, so you can see that over here we have the stem change, the stem change, the stem change over here. We don't have it over here, we don't have it over here, and we have it back in here. So that is why we use that little boot, just to help you remember that stem changing verbs are going to follow this somewhat this pattern over here. Okay, now, important for you guys, this is the present tense. So far we are just having a recap of what is a stem changing verb and what happens with those stem changing verbs. So this is in present, but in this particular unit, in this particular lesson, we are talking about stem changing verb in the past tense, in the preterite or preterito, right? Now, we have verbs ending in AR, ER, and IR, also for stem changing verbs, right? Just like the one I showed you, it was the verb dormir, so that will belong to this ending. We also have stem changing verbs ending in AR, int, and ER. Now, good news for you. These stem changing verbs are only going to be affected in the present tense, okay? So you do not have to worry about that in the preterite form. The only stem changing verbs that we're going to be worried about, because we need a specific conjugation, are going to be those stem changing verbs ending in IR. What are some examples of that? Let me type it over here just for you to know. Preferir. Okay. Preferir. Vivir. No, preferir. Dormir, for example. Okay. Dormir. Morir. Right? So just 3 examples over here, and I'm going to give you a list right after this slide, okay? So if we have some words just like almorzar, that is to have lunch. It is a stem changing verb that is going to be affected in the present, but not in the preterite form, okay? So let's go to the next slide. Then we have something a little bit more visual. We have those ones, all of these are stem changing verbs, okay? But this first group is ending, or they are ending in AR. The second group, the stem changing verbs are ending in ER. And this last group, the stem changing verbs are ending in IR. Now, for you to remember, the ones in red will not change. They will change in the present, but since this time we're talking about the past tense or preterite, they are not going to change. Which ones are going to be affected? The ones in this list, okay? Preferir, mentir, sentir, pedir, seguir, sonreír, vestir, dormir, salir, oír y conducir, okay? Now, we have some in there just for you to remember that we have IR ending groups at some point, and the ones that are going to be changing the vowel where the the stem changing is going to happen, the stem change is going to happen, is the one prior to the ending. I think that we have already, gone through that, but just for you to remember, this is going to be the one affected by the stem change. And over here we have it, and this one, so it's not going to be this exact one, but the ones over here, okay? And so on. So that's how we are going to identify which vowel is going to be affected by the stem change. Now in here, next slide, this is just for you to remember what we have previously discussed, but like I said, you have to keep an eye that the boot is only, or it only applies, it only affects the present tense. Now, what happens because the boot is not going to work for us, because that is for the present and we're focusing on the preterite? That's why we, some instructors, some Spanish instructors, we use this sandal. So I know that is not, the greatest, because it might seem a little bit silly, but this is going to tell you that only these are going to be affected and not the rest of the ones that fit inside the boot. So let me make it a little bit more clear for you. Let me go to this particular chart. In the present, we have the verb preferir, that means to prefer. I prefer pizza over burgers, or I prefer dogs over cats. And then in the present tense, you're going to see that I can say yo prefiero, I prefer. Tú prefieres, you prefer. Él, ella, or usted prefiere. He, she, or usted, or you, in informal, prefer, right? Pero nosotras preferimos. It is not inside the boot. And in here they are not adding vosotros, but you know that vosotros is not inside the boot either. But we come back to ellos, ellas, or ustedes, and they are inside the boot already, and they are also affected by this change. So you can see it over here, here, and so on. All right. Now, this is the present, muy importante. We are, this unit, focusing on the pretérito, and this is where the sandal comes handy, because nothing is going to be affected by that stem change, but these, okay, but these only, okay? Él, ella, or usted, ellos, ellas, or ustedes. And these are going to be the ones affected by that stem change, going from E to I. Okay? And what am I saying? I preferred in the past. You preferred in the past, right? So this is we are using the verb preferir en el pasado, okay? And only these people, or only these subjects or conjugations, are going to be affected. Now, how did I get here? I got here by using the endings that we know for pretérito already, okay? So at the end of the day, preferir is an IR verb, or IR ending verb, and I have to follow those specific endings that match these conjugations over here. If you do not remember how to get there, if you do not remember how to find the endings for the preterite form, please go back to that as well. And if you have issues finding that information, do not hesitate to let me know, okay? Bien, so we are going to continue with the presentation. Let me see. We were over here. So I just have that little boot just to remind you, you know, like this is in the present, but this is in the past. So in here we have a little note. The flip-flop is for the preterite tense or for the past. So this time, this unit, you have to remember that only these are affected by the past tense. Okay? Keep an eye on that. Usted, él, ella, ustedes, ellos, ellas. And this comes back also to another chart that I had sent you before, and I know that it made you feel that you were struggling to understand. Okay, so we have it over here. In here they are called verbios con cambio de vocal or verbos con cambio de raíz, is exactly the same thing, and in English, stem changing verbs, okay? So you can see over here we do have that explanation again, and we have the present, the boot, the past, the sandal. So you can see over here only these two and only these two are affected, different than all of these being affected and forming the shape of the boot, because we are talking about pretérito in this specific chart, okay? So what are the verbs that we are mentioning here? Conseguir, elegir, repetir, sentir, sonreír, and you can see that all of these end in IR, just because they are the only ones affected by this change in the preterite tense or the past tense, okay? Bien. Okay, so we were here. Let's go to the next slide. We only have a couple or more of examples, and remember that the stem change can be either from E to I or from O to U. Before, we also had another scenario or another situation going from E to IE, but in this case we only have to worry about going from E to I or O to U. All right, like just like we have in here. So we will see that next to the verb, and actually let me go right there, go back to our vocabulary so you can be aware of the way how to find the change that we're going to do. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to go back to the book. And as I always tell you guys, it is very important that you take notes, that you are patient, that you don't try to learn everything, you know, you memorize everything. The most important thing is that you make sense out of all of this information and try to do your best to be familiar with it, to have notes, and to help yourself, you know, have it handy. Okay, so let's go back to our book and let me look at the vocab. Okay, let me see. You can see it now. And verbos. Okay, here we have the verbs. These are the ones that I want to focus on, because you're going to see that out of the verbs that we are discussing for stem changing, we are only going to have going from E to I over here. And some of those are going to be used in present, but the ones that we're going to be using in past are only going to go from E to I and O to UE. and they are only going to be ending in IR. So in here they are throwing some new verbs just for the sake of the unit. You know that we're talking about food and the restaurant, but you're going to see that the ones affected by the stem change in the preterite form are only going to be going from E to I and O to U, like in here it says, and ending in IR. Okay, so pay attention to this information. This is page 279. You have to be taking care of these notes, okay, for you to have. But yeah, so let me just recap real quick, like I always like to do. We're starting Unit 8, Lección número 8. We're talking about la comida. You do have very important resources in VHL Central, just like the flashcards. So make sure to use them and be familiar with the vocabulary, take notes and such. So we have to, you know, pay attention and work with the vocab. And we are starting our topic 8.1, tema 8.1, que son el pasado or el pretérito de los verbos con cambio de raíz. Los verbos con cambio de raíz, stem changing verbs, okay? So stem changing verbs in the past, what things do you have to remember? They are not going to follow the boot because the boot is for the present. We're talking about the past, so we're following the sandal, right? We are not going to change all of the stem changing verbs, just the ones ending in IR, because we're focusing on the preterite. And we are not going to use all of the stem changes that we have learned before. We are not going to use the one going from E to IE. We're only going to use the ones going from E to I and O to UE. I know this is a little bit, you know, like too detailed and there's a lot of things to, you know, digest, but I ask you guys to, you know, be patient with yourself. Remember, this is a process. Take notes. They are going to be your best friend. And study, you know, be familiar with the stuff, be familiar with the vocab, because only then the context is going to tell you what's going to happen or what are we talking about. It's going to help you a lot. It is your biggest hint. But if you do not understand the context because you do not understand the words around the whatever you're saying or whatever you're reading, then it is going to be a little bit harder for you to understand. Okay, so please keep working on this. Keep taking notes, make a diagram, bullet points, whatever works for you. Try your best to do the cheat sheets for the end of the unit, not only for, you know, the extra credit, but also because this is going to help you have the information handy and organized. Okay, so I'll see you soon, you guys. This is, you know, like the start of lesson 8 and grammatical topic 8.1. Please keep an eye on your email and on all information posted on Blackboard, and I will see you soon, and stay